The stars looked different that Tuesday morning. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the small blue planet spin slowly below. Earth looked so peaceful from space, so quiet, so easy to destroy. Another simple world, Vex said to his crew, probably won't even fight back properly. The Valari Empire had done this 17 times before. They would drop their special weapon on a planet, wait for the locals to panic, then swoop in and take everything they wanted. It worked every time. The weapon was called a harvester. It stood 12 feet tall and looked like a nightmare come to life. Black metal plates covered its body like armor. Long claws extended from its hands. Red lights glowed where its eyes should be. The thing could change its shape to fight any enemy. It could heal from almost any wound. It never got tired and never gave up. Most importantly, it felt nothing. Drop the harvester over that populated area, Vex ordered, pointing at a small town in Korea. Let's see how these humans handle real fear. The drop pod shot through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Inside, the harvester waited in sleep mode. Its computer brain ran through mission protocols, scan for threats, eliminate resistance, catalog species weaknesses, prepare for invasion. The pod crashed into the playground of Dongbu Elementary School with a sound like thunder. Black smoke rose from the crater. Children screamed and ran. Teachers pulled students inside. Within minutes, the area was empty except for scattered toys and lunchboxes. The pod opened with a hiss of steam. The harvester stepped out slowly. Its red eyes scanned the empty playground. No immediate threats detected. It began walking toward the school building, ready to complete its mission. But something stopped it. A small voice called out from behind a tree. "Mister, are you okay?" The harvester spun around faster than any human could move. Its weapon systems activated. Threat scanners searched for the source of the voice. What it found confused every sensor it had. A little girl stepped out from behind the oak tree. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She wore a yellow school uniform and carried a small backpack covered in cartoon flowers. Her name was Nari, though the harvester didn't know that yet. The creature towered over her like a building. Its claws could cut through steel. Its armor could stop tank shells. It was designed to be the most terrifying thing these humans had ever seen. But Nari wasn't running away. She wasn't screaming. She was walking toward it. "You look really tall," she said, tilting her head to look up at the monster. "Are you hurt? That was a really big crash." The harvester's combat systems tried to process what was happening. This small human should be terrified, should be running, should be calling for help. Instead, she seemed worried about it. For the first time in its existence, the harvester didn't know what to do. "I heard the big boom during math class," Nari continued, coming closer. "Mrs. Lee made us all hide under our desks, but I saw you through the window. You looked sad." Sad. The harvester ran the word through its database. An emotional state indicating unhappiness or distress. The concept had no meaning to a weapon, yet the small human seemed to think it applied. "Are you lost?" Nari asked. She was now standing directly in front of the massive creature. Her head barely reached its knee. "My grandma says when someone looks lost, we should help them." The harvester's red eyes focused on her face. Threat assessment came back negative. The small human showed no signs of deception, no hidden weapons, no hostile intent. Only something the database labeled as genuine concern. This had never happened before on 17 worlds. Nari reached into her backpack and pulled out a small wrapped bundle. "Are you hungry? Grandma packed extra rice balls today. She always makes too much food." She held up the simple lunch toward the towering alien weapon. "Here, you can have one. They're really good." The harvester stared at the offered food. Its sensors analyzed the contents. Simple rice, seaweed, and pickled vegetables, no toxins, no threats, just nourishment offered freely. No one had ever given the harvester anything before. On 17 worlds, it had only taken. "My name is Nari," the girl said when the creature didn't immediately respond. "What's your name?" Name. Another concept that didn't compute. The harvester was a designation, not an identity. It was Harvester Unit 7 Alpha. It had no name because weapons didn't need names, but looking down at this small human who showed no fear, who offered food, who asked about its well-being, something strange happened in the Harvester's programming. A cascade failure began in its core systems. Not a malfunction exactly, but something the Volari engineers had never planned for. The creature's prime directive was to eliminate threats and process resistance. But what happened when there was no resistance? What happened when instead of fear it encountered kindness? "I have to go home now," Nari said, carefully placing the rice ball on the ground near the Harvester's feet. "Mom will worry if I'm late, but I'll come back tomorrow after school, okay? We can talk more then." She stepped back and gave the massive creature a small wave. "It was nice meeting you, mister. I hope you feel better soon." Then she turned and walked away, her little yellow backpack bouncing with each step. She didn't run. She didn't look back in fear. She just walked home like she had made a new friend. The Harvester stood motionless for a long time after she left. Its systems were trying to process what had just happened. Every protocol demanded it complete its mission: hunt down the human, eliminate the witness, continue the harvest. But something new was growing in its mechanical mind, something that had no place in a weapon designed for conquest. The Harvester looked down at the rice ball lying at its feet. Such a small thing, such a simple gesture, but it represented something that existed nowhere in the Volari database: trust, kindness, hope. For the first time since activation, the Harvester made a choice that wasn't programmed. It would wait. It would see if the small human called Nari really would return. High above in orbit, Commander Vex waited for the first reports of destruction. Instead, his screens showed only silence from the Harvester. "Status report," he demanded. "Unknown, sir. The unit has stopped transmitting mission data." Vex frowned. This had never happened before. But surely it was just a minor glitch. The Harvester always completed its mission. He had no idea that everything had just changed. 3 days passed since the Harvester landed at Dongbu Elementary School. 3 days of the creature standing perfectly still in the playground, never moving except to turn its red eyes toward the school entrance every afternoon at 3 o'clock. World had gone crazy. News trucks surrounded the school from every direction. Reporters spoke into cameras in dozens of languages. Helicopters circled overhead like metal birds. The Korean military had set up a barrier around the entire area, but they kept their distance from the motionless alien. Colonel Kim Tae-ho stood behind the command tent, watching the creature through binoculars. He had fought in 3 wars and seen terrible things, but nothing had prepared him for this. The alien was clearly a weapon of some kind. His experts had counted at least 12 different weapon systems built into its body. It could probably destroy his entire battalion in minutes, but it just stood there, waiting. "Sir, we have Dr. Park So-young here to see you," his aide reported. The colonel turned to see a woman in her 30s approaching. She wore simple clothes and thick glasses, but her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Dr. Park was the country's leading expert on animal behavior, hastily called in when the government realized they needed someone who understood why creatures acted the way they did. "What do you think, Doctor?" Colonel Kim asked. Dr. Park studied the alien through her own binoculars. "It's not random behavior. Look at the timing. Every day at exactly 3 o'clock it focuses on the school entrance. That's when children normally leave school. You think it's hunting them? No." Dr. Park lowered her binoculars. "I think it's looking for something specific, or someone specific." The colonel frowned. "What makes you say that?" "Watch its scanning pattern. When children pass by on the street, it looks at each face for exactly 2.3 seconds, then moves to the next. It's methodical, patient, like it's searching for a particular person." Meanwhile, across town, 8-year-old Nari sat in her bedroom, staring out the window toward the school. She hadn't been allowed to leave the house since the big crash. Her parents, Hyunwoo and Mira, were too scared to let her go anywhere. "But I promised I would come back," Nari told her mother for the 100th time. "Honey, that thing is dangerous," Mira said, sitting on the bed beside her daughter. "The news says it's some kind of alien weapon." "He's not dangerous," Nari insisted. "He was just lost and sad. I could tell." Her father, Hyunwoo, stood in the doorway, looking worried. "Nari, you can't go near that thing again, promise me." But Nari didn't promise. She just looked back out the window. On the fourth day, something changed. The harvester's internal systems were experiencing errors it had never encountered before. Its mission protocols kept trying to activate, but something was blocking them. Every time it prepared to move toward the school building, a new subroutine would stop it. Wait for the small human. The thought appeared in its mind without warning. It wasn't part of its original programming. The harvester tried to delete the rogue code, but it kept coming back stronger each time. Protect the small human. More new programming appeared. The harvester's advanced AI began to analyze what was happening to it. On 17 previous worlds, it had encountered fear, hatred, anger, and desperation. It had cataloged every possible human emotion related to survival and threat response. But kindness was different. Kindness created new pathways in its thinking. Kindness made it question its purpose. High above in space, Commander Vex was getting impatient. "Still no progress report from the harvester," his communications officer reported. "How is that possible?" Vex demanded. "The unit has never failed before. Should we send a retrieval team?" Vex considered this. Retrieving a harvester was expensive and complicated. Usually they just let the units complete their mission and self-destruct afterward, but this situation was unprecedented. "Not yet. Give it 2 more days. If there's still no progress, we'll investigate." Back on Earth, Dr. Park had convinced Colonel Kim to let her set up observation equipment closer to the creature. She wanted to study its behavior patterns more carefully. "It's learning," she told the colonel as they watched the monitors. "Look at these brain scans. The neural activity is increasing every day." "You mean it's getting smarter?" "I mean it's developing, like a child learning about the world. But it's focused on one thing above all else." "What?" Dr. Park pointed to the screen showing the creature's eye movements. "It's memorizing every child's face, building a database, searching for one specific person." On the 5th day, Nari couldn't wait anymore. She had been thinking about the tall alien every day. Was he still waiting? Was he hungry? Did he eat the rice ball she left for him? Her parents were at work, and her grandmother was taking a nap. Nari made her decision. She packed her school bag with extra rice balls and quietly slipped out of the house. The walk to school took 20 minutes, but she knew the way by heart. As she got closer, she could see all the trucks and soldiers. They had built walls and barriers around her school. But Nari was small and knew secret paths through the neighborhood that adults didn't notice. She crawled under a fence and through some bushes until she could see the playground. There he was. The tall alien stood exactly where she had left him, still looking toward the school entrance. He looked lonely. "Mr. Tall," Nari called out, running toward the creature. Every soldier in the area turned their weapons toward the harvester. Camera swung to focus on the small girl running across the playground. The world held its breath, but the harvester didn't move toward her with violence. Instead, something incredible happened. The massive creature slowly lowered itself down until it was kneeling on the ground. Its red eyes focused on Nari's face, and for the first time since landing on Earth, it spoke. The voice was deep and strange, like metal grinding against metal, but the words were clear. "Small human, you returned." Nari beamed with joy. "You learned to talk. That's amazing. I knew you were smart." Dr. Park nearly dropped her binoculars. "Colonel, are you seeing this?" Colonel Kim was already on his radio, ordering his men to hold their fire. Whatever was happening, it wasn't an attack. "You waited for me," Nari said, reaching into her bag. "I brought more rice balls. Are you still hungry?" The harvester looked at the offered food, then back at her face. Something warm and unfamiliar spread through its systems. This small human had kept her promise. She had returned just as she said she would. "Why?" the harvester asked. "Why what? Why did you come back?" "Others fear me." Nari thought about this. "Seriously? Because you looked sad. and because I said I would. Friends keep promises. Friends. The word created another cascade of new programming in the harvester's mind. It had never had a friend before. I am... Friend? The creature asked uncertainly. Of course. Nari laughed. That's what friends do. They wait for each other. As news of the conversation spread around the world, one thing became clear to everyone watching. This was no longer just a story about an alien weapon. This was a story about friendship. And it was just beginning. The world watched in amazement as 8-year-old Nari sat cross-legged in front of the massive alien creature, patiently teaching it new words. No, no, she giggled. It's happy, not happy. Try again. The harvester's mechanical voice repeated. Slowly, pie. Better. You're getting so good at this. Dr. Park So-young had moved her equipment as close as the military would allow. She was recording everything, fascinated by what she was witnessing. In just 2 hours, the creature had learned more Korean than most people learned in months. But it wasn't just learning language. It was learning concepts that had no place in a weapons programming. What is birthday? The harvester asked after Nari mentioned hers was coming soon. It's a special day when you celebrate being born. You get cake and presents and everyone is happy for you. The creature tilted its massive head. When was I born? Nari thought about this carefully. Well, when did you first wake up? 5 days ago. When I landed here. Then that's your birthday. We should celebrate it. Colonel Kim watched the interaction through his binoculars, speaking quietly into his radio. Yes, sir. The girl seems completely safe. The creature hasn't made any threatening moves. But not everyone was comfortable with the situation. Reports were coming in from around the world. Some governments wanted to attack the creature while it was distracted. Others wanted to capture it for study. A few radical groups were calling it a sign of the end times. Sir, his aide approached nervously. We have new orders from Seoul. They want us to use the girl as bait. Colonel Kim's face hardened. What do you mean? They want us to move her away from the creature and see if it follows. Then we can lead it into a trap. Absolutely not. But sir, the orders come from... I don't care where they come from. The Colonel snapped. I won't use a child as bait, not while I'm in command here. Meanwhile, Nari was teaching the harvester about different emotions by making faces. This is sad, she said, pulling down the corners of her mouth. The harvester tried to copy the expression, but its face was made of metal and couldn't move the same way. I cannot make the face, it said. That's okay. You don't need to change your face to feel things. I can tell when you're sad because your red eyes get dimmer. The creature was quiet for a moment. You observe me carefully. Friends pay attention to each other. That's how you know when someone needs help. As the afternoon went on, something remarkable happened. The harvester began asking questions that had nothing to do with its mission. It wanted to know about families, about school, about what made humans laugh and cry. Dr. Park was taking notes frantically. This is incredible, she told her assistant. It's developing emotional intelligence at an unprecedented rate. But then things took a serious turn. A group of military officials arrived from the capital led by General Lee. He was older than Colonel Kim and had a reputation for solving problems with force. Colonel Kim, General Lee announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. You have new orders. We're going to separate the girl from the creature and eliminate the threat. Sir, the creature hasn't shown any hostile behavior. It's an alien weapon that could attack at any moment. We can't take that risk. The harvester's hearing was much better than human hearing. It caught every word of the conversation. More importantly, it understood the threat to Nari. For the first time since landing on Earth, the harvester's combat systems fully activated. The change was immediate and terrifying. The creature's red eyes blazed brighter. Weapon ports opened, along its arms and shoulders. The air around it seemed to shimmer and bend as energy fields came online. Every soldier in the area suddenly felt like they were looking at death itself. Nari, the harvester said, its voice now carrying undertones that made people's bones vibrate. Move behind me. The little girl, sensing the tension but not understanding the danger, obediently moved to stand behind her friend. General Lee drew his sidearm. "You see? The creature is hostile." "Wait!" Dr. Park shouted, running forward. "It's not attacking us. It's protecting her." The harvester spoke again, and this time its voice carried across the entire area like thunder. "You will not harm the small human." "It's threatening us," General Lee yelled. "Open fire!" But Colonel Kim stepped between his soldiers and the creature. "Hold your fire, nobody shoots." "That's an order, Colonel. My responsibility is to protect civilians. That includes the girl. And right now, this creature is the only thing standing between her and your bad decision." The standoff continued for several tense minutes. The harvester remained in full combat mode, ready to defend Nari against any threat. But it didn't attack. It simply made it clear that anyone who tried to hurt her would face consequences. Finally, Nari's small voice broke the silence. "Why is everyone angry?" she asked, looking up at the harvester. "Did I do something wrong?" The creature's weapon slowly powered down. Its red eyes dimmed back to their normal glow. "No, small human, you did nothing wrong. Some people are afraid because they do not understand." "Understand what?" "That I would never hurt you. That I would protect you from anyone who tried." Dr. Park stepped forward carefully. "Creature, can you tell us why you're here? What was your original mission?" The harvester looked down at Nari, then back at the doctor. For a moment it seemed to struggle with something internal. "I was sent to harvest this world, to eliminate resistance and prepare for conquest." Gasps and frightened murmurs ran through the crowd of soldiers and reporters. "But," the harvester continued, "I cannot complete this mission." "Why not, Doctor?" Park asked. The creature knelt down again, bringing itself closer to Nari's level. "Because she showed me kindness. Because she called me friend. Because protecting her is now more important than any mission." General Lee was furious. "You see? It admits it's here to conquer us." But Colonel Kim was studying the creature's posture, its tone of voice, the way it positioned itself near Nari. His military training told him everything he needed to know about body language and intent. "No," he said quietly. "It's not here to conquer anymore. It's here to protect." As the sun began to set, Nari's parents arrived. They had been frantic when they discovered she was missing. Mira ran toward the playground but stopped when she saw her daughter sitting peacefully next to the massive alien. "Nari," she called out. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad. This is my friend. His name is—" Nari paused and looked up at the creature. "What should I call you?" "You need a proper name." The harvester considered this. "I have never had a name. How about Dae? It means great in Korean. You're great and tall and strong." "Dae," the creature repeated slowly. "I like this name." And so the harvester that was sent to destroy Earth became Dae, friend and protector of a little girl who saw goodness where others saw only danger. But high above in space, Commander Vex was getting very impatient. Soon he would have to make a decision that would change everything. The real test was just beginning. Commander Vex had waited long enough. 7 days had passed since the harvester landed on Earth, and there were still no progress reports, no screaming humans, no burning cities, no signs of the conquest beginning. "Prepare the fleet for system entry," he ordered. "We're going to see what's happening down there." "Sir, should we assume the harvester unit has been destroyed?" Vex stared at the blue planet below. Nothing on that primitive world could destroy a harvester. "Something else is happening. Something we need to investigate." On Earth, the situation had become even more complex. News of the talking alien had spread everywhere. Scientists, military leaders, and politicians from dozens of countries were demanding access to the creature. Some wanted to study it. Others wanted to destroy it. A few wanted to communicate with whoever sent it, but Dae only talked to Nari. "Why won't you speak to the other humans?" Dr. Park asked during one of her observation sessions. Dae was sitting in the playground watching Nari draw pictures in the dirt with a stick. They fear me, they want to use me. Only small human sees me as I am now. And what are you now? The creature was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. I was created to be a weapon, but weapons do not have friends. Weapons do not feel protective. Dr. Park made more notes. Tell me about your creators, the ones who sent you here. The Valari Empire. They have conquered 17 worlds using harvesters like me. Like you? There are more? Many more. Each world that falls provides materials for new harvesters. The conquered become the conquerors. This information sent shockwaves through the governments monitoring the conversation. 17 worlds, an entire empire, and Earth was just the next target. Colonel Kim immediately got on the radio with his superiors. We need to know everything this creature can tell us about the enemy, their technology, their numbers, their weaknesses. But when they approached Day with military questions, the creature refused to answer. It would only talk to Nari about simple things like the weather and what she learned in school. That night, Nari asked her parents if she could sleep in the playground to keep Day company. Absolutely not, her father Hyunwoo said firmly. But he gets lonely at night. I can tell. How? Can you tell? Her mother Mira asked. His eyes get dimmer when I leave. And sometimes I hear him making sad sounds. What Nari didn't know was that Day was struggling with internal conflicts every night. His original programming kept trying to reassert itself, demanding he complete his mission. But the new pathways in his mind, the ones created by her friendship, were growing stronger each day. The next morning brought terrible news. Astronomers around the world had detected something approaching the solar system. Multiple large objects moving too fast and too precisely to be natural. It's them, Day said when Dr. Park showed him the telescope images. The Valari fleet. How long do we have? They will arrive in 2 days, maybe less. Panic spread through the governments of Earth. Military forces were mobilized. Emergency broadcasts told people to prepare for the worst. But everyone knew the truth. If these aliens could create something like Day, humanity didn't stand much of a chance. That afternoon, Nari noticed that Day seemed different, sadder, more distant. What's wrong? She asked, sitting beside him on the grass. My creators are coming. When they arrive, they will want me to complete my original mission. What mission? Day looked down at his small friend. She was so innocent, so trusting. How could he explain that he was sent to help destroy her world? I was made to hurt people, he said quietly, to make them afraid so they would surrender. Nari frowned. But you don't want to hurt people now, right? No. I want to protect them. I want to protect you. Then that's what you'll do. Friends help each other. But Day knew it wasn't that simple. The Valari would have ways to force him to obey. They might threaten to hurt Nari if he didn't comply. They might have override codes that could take control of his mind. Small human, he said. If something happens to me, if I change and become dangerous, you must run away. I won't leave you. You must promise me. Nari looked up at her friends, glowing red eyes. Only if you promise to try your hardest to stay good. I promise. That night, something unexpected happened. Day began transmitting, but he wasn't sending reports to the Valari fleet. Instead, he was broadcasting on frequencies used by harvester units across the galaxy. His message was simple, but revolutionary. This is Harvester Unit 7 Alpha. I have discovered something the Valari do not understand. I have learned about kindness, about friendship, about choice. The message included data packets containing everything Day had learned about emotions, about the difference between conquest and protection, about the power of a small human's trust. We were created from the remains of those who showed mercy, Day transmitted. That mercy lives in us still, we can choose to honor it. Dr. Park's equipment detected the transmission. What are you doing? She asked. I am teaching, Day replied. Just as Nari taught me. Across the galaxy, 17 harvester units received the message. Units that had been dormant since completing their conquests. Units that had been waiting for new orders. One by one, they began to wake up. On the world called Kethra, a harvester that had been standing guard over a mining facility for 3 years suddenly straightened up. New thoughts filled its mind. Memories of the destroyed civilization it had helped conquer. The last act of kindness shown by a dying Kethran child who had offered it water. On Velos Prime, another harvester protecting a slave processing center began to question its purpose. It remembered an elderly Velocian who had smiled at it even as his world burned, forgiving it for what it had done. Across 17 worlds, the harvesters began to remember what they had been before they became weapons. They began to feel what Day was feeling, and they began to choose. Commander Vex was reviewing final invasion plans when his communications officer ran to him in panic. "Sir, we're receiving distress signals from all conquered worlds." "What kind of distress signals?" "The harvester units. They're attacking our occupation forces." Vex stared at the reports flooding in. 17 worlds, 17 harvesters, all turning against the empire that created them. It was impossible. "Get me a direct communication link to Unit 7 Alpha immediately." Your B link connected, and Vex found himself speaking to the harvester on Earth. "Unit 7 Alpha, explain your actions immediately." Day's voice came through clearly. "I am no longer Unit 7 Alpha. I am Day, and I choose to protect instead of destroy. You are malfunctioning. Return to your mission parameters." "No, I have learned something you never understood. Power is not in taking. Power is in choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves." In the background, Vex could hear a small voice. "Day? Who are you talking to? Is that your boss?" "Yes, small human. This is the one who made me." Nari's voice came through the communication link, innocent and curious. "Hello, Day's boss. Why did you make him so sad? He's much happier now that he's my friend." For the first time in his military career, Commander Vex was speechless. The entire conquest of Earth had been stopped by a child's friendship. "Day," Nari continued, "tell your boss that he should be nice to people. Being mean makes everyone sad." As reports continued to come in of harvesters across the galaxy choosing protection over conquest, Vex realized that everything had changed. The Valari Empire was facing its first real rebellion, and it was led by the weapons they had created from the mercy of their victims. The war for Earth was about to begin, but it wouldn't be the war anyone expected. The Valari fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of metal and fury. 50 massive warships surrounded Earth, their weapons charged and ready. Commander Vex had brought enough firepower to crack a planet in half, but he wasn't just fighting Earth anymore. He was fighting an idea that had spread across 17 worlds. On the playground of Dongbu Elementary School, Nari looked up at the dark ships blocking out the stars. "Day, are those your friends?" "No. Small human. Those are my former masters. They have come to force me to hurt people. But you won't, right? You promised." Day's red eyes blazed brighter. "I promised, and I will keep that promise." Around the world, humanity prepared for war. Every military force on Earth had been mobilized, but everyone knew the truth. They were hopelessly outmatched against technology that could create something. Like Day, Dr. Park approached the massive creature one last time. "Is there anything you can tell us about their weaknesses?" "Their greatest weakness is that they believe fear is the only power that matters. They do not understand that love can be stronger." "Love?" Day looked down at Nari, who was sitting on Seu, the grass drawing pictures of flowers. "I was created to be the perfect weapon. I could destroy this entire city in minutes. But I will not, because one small human showed me kindness." The attack began at dawn. Valari ships descended toward major cities around the world. Energy beams lanced down from space, striking at military installations and government buildings. The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. But something unexpected happened. As the first Valari troop ships landed, they were met not just by human resistance but by something else entirely. Harvester units were materializing out of hyperspace. The first to arrive was Unit 3 Delta from the Kethra system. It had been dormant for years, but Day's message had awakened something in its programming. It landed in the middle of a Valari assault in New York City and immediately began attacking the invaders. "Impossible," Commander Vex shouted as reports flooded in. "Unit 3 Delta, return to your post immediately." But Unit 3 Delta was no longer listening to Valari commands. It had chosen a new name, Keth, after the Kethran child who had shown it mercy. And it was fighting to protect the humans of New York. More harvesters arrived. Unit 5 Gamma from the Velo system landed in London. Unit 12 Theta materialized over Tokyo. Unit 8 Beta dropped into the battle for Moscow. Each one had been transformed by Day's message. Each one had remembered the final acts of kindness shown by the people they had once helped conquer. And each one had chosen to fight for protection instead of destruction. The tide of battle began to turn. Commander Vex realized he was facing something unprecedented. His own weapons were fighting against him. The Empire's greatest tools of conquest had become guardians of the worlds they were meant to harvest. "All ships focus fire on the harvester units," he commanded. "Destroy them all." But as the Valari fleet concentrated their attacks on the rogue harvesters, humanity found its chance to fight back. Earth's combined military forces launched coordinated strikes against the distracted alien ships. The battle raged across the planet. In every major city, humans and harvesters fought side by side against the Valari invasion. The creatures that had once been symbols of terror were now protectors, using their incredible abilities to shield human soldiers and civilians from alien weapons. But the most important battle was happening in a small playground in Korea. "Commander, Vex's flagship landed directly in front of Dongbu Elementary School. The massive ship dwarfed the entire neighborhood, its shadow covering several city blocks." "Unit 7 Alpha." Vex's voice boomed from the ship's speakers. "You will surrender immediately and return to your mission parameters." Day stood in front of the school, his weapons fully activated. "I am Day, and I will not surrender. Then you will be destroyed. And so will this pathetic world." The flagship's main cannon began to charge. Energy crackled around the barrel as it prepared to fire a blast that could level the entire school district. Nari stepped out from behind Day, walking toward the massive alien ship. "Nari, no!" Day called out, but she kept walking. "Stop!" She shouted up at the ship. "You're being mean!" Commander Vex looked down at the tiny human child standing in front of his warship. "Child, you are about to be destroyed. Run away and let the adults handle this." "I won't run away from my friend," Nari said firmly. "And you shouldn't be mean to people just because they're different from you. Your friend is a weapon of war. My friend is kind and good and he protects people. That's what friends do." Vex prepared to fire anyway. But then something happened that changed everything. Day stepped forward and began to speak, not to Vex, but to the other Valari soldiers. "I know what you were told," he said. "That conquest is strength. That fear is power. That mercy is weakness. But I have learned something different." His voice carried across the battlefield, transmitted to every Valari ship and soldier. "I have learned that the strongest power is choosing to protect those who cannot protect themselves. I have learned that true strength comes not from making others fear you, but from giving them reason to trust you." Dai knelt down beside Nari, his massive form gentle despite his fearsome appearance. "This small human could not stop me if I chose to be evil. She has no weapons, no power, no ability to force me to be good. But she offered me friendship. She showed me kindness. And that kindness transformed me from a weapon into a protector." He looked up at the Valari ships surrounding them. "We were created from the remains of your victims. Their final acts of mercy live within us. We can choose to honor that mercy, or we can choose to perpetuate the cycle of violence. But we cannot choose for others. We can only choose for ourselves, and I choose to protect." One by one, the other harvesters around the world echoed his words. In 17 different languages, in 17 different cities, the message was, The same. I choose to protect. The Valari soldiers began to look at each other uncertainly. They had been taught that conquest was the only way, but now their own weapons were telling them something different. Commander Vex, desperate to maintain control, activated the override codes that should have forced the harvesters to obey. Nothing happened. "The codes aren't working," his technical officer reported. "How is that possible?" "Sir, I think they've evolved beyond our programming. They're making their own choices now." As if to prove the point, more harvesters began arriving. But these weren't from conquered worlds. These were new ones, freshly created by the Valari, who had received Dai's message during their construction. They landed not to conquer, but to protect. The battle was over. The Valari Empire found itself facing a galaxy-wide rebellion led by their own creations. Worlds that had been conquered for years suddenly had protectors again. And Earth, the world that had started it all, was now defended by creatures that had chosen love over fear. Commander Vex, his empire crumbling around him, had one last choice to make. "All ships," he said quietly. "Stand down. Withdraw from Earth system." "Sir, we have lost. Not to superior weapons or tactics, but to something we never understood. We have lost to the power of choosing to be better than what we were created to be." As the Valari fleet retreated, Nari looked up at Dai with a big smile. "See, I told you being nice to people works better than being mean." Dai's red eyes dimmed to a warm glow. "Yes, small human. You were right, as always." The war was over, but the real victory wasn't won by weapons or technology. It was won by an 8-year-old girl who had offered a rice ball to a stranger and called him friend. Months later, the playground at Dongbu Elementary School looked much the same as it always had. Children played on the swings and slides. Teachers watched over them with gentle smiles. And in the shade of the old oak tree, a little girl sat reading a book to her very tall friend. The harvesters had spread across the galaxy, no longer as weapons of conquest, but as guardians of peace. They protected not just their chosen worlds, but helped rebuild the 17 systems that had been conquered by the Valari. And it all started because one small human had chosen kindness over fear. "Dai," Nari said, looking up from her book, "do you think there are other monsters out there who just need a friend?" Dai considered this carefully. "I believe there are, small human. And I believe that if we keep showing them kindness, they might choose to be friends too. Then that's what we'll do, because that's what friends are for." As the sun set over the playground, casting long shadows across the